first seen together in a hot tub with Aiden Ross, and then went together to the Streamer Awards. The same night as the award show, Amaranth posted on OnlyFans an explicit video of her with a man in the shower. While the man's face is not shown, he is wearing a Hawaiian shirt, which is a trademark of Young Gravy. The two went on to collab in a music video together, along with the mysterious YouTuber Dream. The last inconsistency in this whole husband
mysterious
drama involves
YouTuber
the reasoning behind
Dream?
her desire to make money. At first, she claimed that Nick wanted to get rich and was forcing her to put out content. But when the relationship ended, she had enough money to retire, but decided to continue to produce content because she wanted to open an animal sanctuary.
My inspiration for my animal sanctuary is a little more bittersweet. I didn't have many social experiences growing up. I kind of just made friends with animals and stuck to my own little room.
She stated that once she has enough money to keep the shelter running, she would retire for good. Well, as of 2023, she claimed to have made $57 million, but said it still wasn't enough. Caleb Hammer called her out on this, stating that she had already hit her goal.
You know, if that $45 million was just in the overall market, $45 million, and you withdrew 3% for the rest of the year, which means it'll pretty much never run out, that would only be $1,350,000 a year in guaranteed income for the rest of your life. So you already hit the goal if you were in the overall market.
I would have to finish my investing, my private equity, to be able to get that much, actually.
In an attempt to perhaps get people to talk about something other than her husband's, Amaranth decided to release a beer that was made from her own vaginal yeast called Essence of Amaranth by Yoni. This beer cost $22 plus delivery for just one bottle, but it gave her more media attention along with her new adult device, a mold of her nether region.
Rumor has it that part of your vagina is in this beverage that I'm drinking.
Oh, it's not rumor. It's factual.
How is?
It's because I gave
Gross.
the company my yeast, and then they grew the yeast,
Gross.
the culturing of it.
She also began to get involved with boxing, going to the gym more seriously than in the past in order to train.
Not
Amaranth
unless it's
announced
fresh.
to her fans that she planned to fight in Spain against a woman named Maichi, a Spanish.
You didn't get vagina juice. You got vagina stank. If it's that old, if it's been days and days or weeks and weeks, if not months and months, since that was inside her vagina, you didn't get vagina juice. You got vagina stank ass oil. You got vagina stank oil. That's just weird. It's weird. It's not the same thing.
This ended up not happening when Amaranth announced she had ovarian failure
That
and
dude
had
was
to
drinking
undergo
it.
surgery. Despite her
Oh,
attempts
good.
to
Maybe she has ovarian cancer and you drank it. Damn it. I didn't write it. I didn't say it. They said it. Not me. I didn't come up with this. I didn't come up with this weird shit. I didn't come up with this.
Clear of drama, she found herself in some hot water.
I just
when
make
fellow adult
jokes.
Star Adriana Chechik randomly began exposing her during a stream for the oddest of things.
Everything is fake, like literally.
Yes, I've been subscribed.
Yeah, so you know that all the BG videos, it's not real.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all fake.
What do you mean
Yes,
BG
I
videos?
do.
This isn't the first time someone accused Amaranth of strategically using angles to make sexual content look real when it wasn't. From what I ascertained from these online Coomers complaints, they claim not to see any real penetration since she blurs and conceals her nether region. If true, this means that Amaranth has been able to successfully charge large sums of money to her simps for videos that don't actually show anything. Adriana seemed upset over this because Amaranth had won adult industry awards for physically faking it, which could have gone to more deserving sex workers.
I committed my life to this. You don't slide into it like a cheap pair of slippers and then reap all the rewards.
Despite her bad blood with the adult star, Adriana did stick up for Amaranth when two female streamers named Indy Fox and Dan Dangler hatched a plot to expose her. They reached out to Miss Chechik after Amaranth was banned from Twitch for the 6th time. They offered for her to come on a podcast to talk about the infamous streamer and for Adriana to expand more upon the comments she made. This backfired horribly for the two mean girls, as Adriana released all the messages and publicly called out the women in a tweet stating, Dan Dangler hit me up with a text from IndieFox trying to get me to do a podcast with her to bring Amaranth down. Like, no, I said she was mean, but I'm a grown woman and it's not my job to defame anyone. IndieFox and Amaranth have a long-standing feud as they were seen as competitors during the hot tub.
Oh, I can
ASMR
shop the
metas.
blue tree.
In the end, Amaranth managed to supersede IndieFox as top creator because following this stunt, she was permanently banned from Twitch. Amaranth went so far as stating that it was her who baited the rival into the ban by getting her to push more boundaries for attention. As of recently, Amaranth has decided to leave Twitch because of all the bans and signed a $30 million contract with the platform Kick. She recently became brand ambassador for 2 adult companies. She also invested in Wildcard Gaming and is also a co-owner. As for her personal life, I don't think she will ever share the truth behind it. When asked about having kids, she seemed pretty dismissive of the concept.
And you don't know if you want kids yet?
Yeah, I don't know, because I never wanted them growing up, because my family was kind of poor, and so I never wanted to have to say no to a kid for financial reasons. But now I make so much money that I don't really have that excuse anymore, but because I've never imagined myself with kids, now I just don't know if I want them.
To be clear, it's not because people aren't reaching out to her. Even Kanye West has tried to hook up with the illustrious streamer. While nothing ever went down with Kanye, it's clear that Amaranth knows how to draw attention to herself. Despite all of her attempts to get more engagement around her name, she always seems to go viral for situations she never addresses. And that brings us to current day, with there still being a lot of unknowns involving one of OnlyFans' biggest stars. Considering she spends $7,000 a month scrubbing her content off the internet, it's no surprise she's been able to stay relatively secretive. If one thing could be said about Amaranth, is that she's extremely consistent. Having filmed non-stop for the past 8 years has given her a devoted fan base, even if she seems to
That's
have
what I
some
want. Except I plan to do that for another 5 times past that or something like that, which is insane.
animosity towards them.
And it'll be fucking hard. I will not have this energy the whole 50 years. I knew I wouldn't pass the first couple of years. Like, I knew that I would settle into the groove. But I've tried to resist it. I just try to be as wild as I can fucking be, you know?
At the end of the day, I don't think we'll ever get a straight answer as to why Amaranth doesn't just go and take her millions to build a dream animal sanctuary and leave the World Wide Web behind her. But I have a feeling that deep down she simply enjoys doing it and doesn't actually want to change.
I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it.
Lies.
So today, a lot of big celebrities' Twitter pages were hacked. Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Barack Obama.
Deceit.
Our prototype didn't meet the criteria.
Cheating.
She will spend 18 years on probation.
While the internet has done a lot of good for the world, its anonymous nature has led to a lot of wrongdoing in terms of users deceiving others for their own financial gain. Today we'll dig deep into the most notorious...
Oh, never mind. We've seen this one before. I'm getting off this now. It's a new video, but he's so one and the same. I can't tell which video I'm on. Oh, here's a war front.
It's the 20th of January, 2025, and Joe Biden's no longer the President of the United States. After 4 years defined by domestic turmoil, geopolitical hardship,
interesting
and personal
8 years.
controversy, the 82-year-old from Pennsylvania has gone from his time as the most powerful man on Earth to the very beginning of his time in the history books. He leaves behind a divisive and complicated legacy, a polarized nation, a world seemingly on the brink of a new great power Cold War, and a White House that has now passed into the hands of the most bitter political opponent Biden ever faced. But today, we're not gonna spend our time, or yours, on the personal trials and tribulations of Joe Biden. We won't be discussing laptops, vaccines, debt ceilings, gerontocracy, or the age-old question of how the coming generations will look back on America's President number 46. Instead, we're going to be pointing a laser focus on Joe Biden's impact around the world, from the quagmires of the Middle East and Central Asia to the battlefields of Eastern Europe to the rising threats of the Chinese dragon and more. We're going to examine Biden's foreign policy in all of its nuance and complexity, its notable successes, its remarkable failures, and its profound ramifications across the globe. This isn't going to be easy, it's not going to be kind, but it is necessary, as one ultra-powerful man leaves a legacy that the world may reckon with for decades to come. In any discussion of Joe Biden's record abroad, there is no other place to start than America's exit from the nation of Afghanistan. At the time that the withdrawal concluded, on the 30th of August 2021, the United States had been at war in Afghanistan for just short of 20 years. The conflict had become the geopolitical center of America's long war on terror, and by the time of the withdrawal, it had left some 70,000 civilians, over 120,000 combined US-backed Afghan fighters and Taliban insurgents, and 2,420 American troops dead, alongside over 1,000 deaths sustained by other members of America's coalition. It's important to understand, to Joe Biden's limited credit, that at the very least, a withdrawal from Afghanistan at that time wasn't his idea. Instead, it was an albatross hung around Biden's neck, courtesy of the man who was his then predecessor and has since become his successor, Donald Trump. In 2020, the US, under Donald Trump, signed a deal with the Taliban to begin a US withdrawal to end in 2021. Trump likely planned to finish the pullout himself, assuming that it'd serve a second consecutive term, but when Biden took office early that year, he found a diminished force of about 2,500 remaining American troops in the country, supplemented by about 18,000 contractors. But even though Biden didn't choose to inherit the withdrawal process, he also went about dealing with the problem in a way that we'll call out again and again throughout this episode. Limited changes, half measures, and unforced errors, when comprehensive change and full commitment to his course of action would have likely served the world a lot better. By April of 2021, Biden had indicated that a withdrawal on the rush timeline Trump had left him for that May just wouldn't be possible. The news came amidst US intelligence concerns that Afghanistan's government may be too fragile to hold, and amidst reports that Biden was considering keeping troops in the country
I might be done
till at least November. But instead of changing America's
if
approach
I'm not, I'll be
the realities
close.
on the ground and to bolster Afghanistan for the trouble that may be coming next, Biden announced a self-imposed, entirely symbolic and frankly unnecessary deadline for America's withdrawal. September the 11th of that year, 20 years after the Twin Towers and Pentagon attacks that drew America's response by way of the war on terror. As the White House pushed towards its arbitrary date and American troops fell back to a strictly defensive posture as set out by Trump's Taliban deal, the Taliban surged its rate of attacks nationwide. The insurgents launched a large-scale disinformation campaign that the US hardly attempted to counter, claiming that the US had already ceded large portions of the country and morale among Afghan government troops plummeted through the floor. By May, the Taliban was pushing forward in a nationwide offensive in a sequence of events that probably should have drawn a change of plans from Biden and his inner circle, but none came. American troops left the critical Bagram Air Base overnight without notifying the Afghan government, leaving behind substantial kit for the Taliban to eventually capture and standing clear for looters to take what they wished. By mid-July, the Taliban was poised to capture much of the country and looked as if they could even challenge for control in the capital city of Kabul. But again, Biden chose not to change his approach to match the new realities on the ground. Instead, he accelerated America's departure deadline by nearly 2 weeks. By July's end, half of Afghanistan was under Taliban control, and on August the 15th, 2021, the capital city of Kabul fell to their forces. It was an incredible failure of US military intelligence, and there's no sugarcoating it for Biden either. The decision not to turn US troops around from their retreat and force them to make a hasty defense of Kabul was probably the less costly one. But by then, American forces in Afghanistan were at the mercy of conditions that either Biden had failed to change when he had the chance, or worse, that were conditions of Biden's own creation. By then, the US was in the midst of a desperate airlift attempt from Hamid Karzai International Airport, with thousands of Americans and citizens of US allied nations trying to escape the Taliban advance, and with thousands of Afghan interpreters and other perceived US collaborators facing a mortal threat from the Taliban if they couldn't get out. The airlift itself was a combination of admirable successes and horrific failures. Very quickly, the US was able to lead an effort to create 24/7 overwatch of Afghan airspace, locking down the area over Kabul and forming a safe corridor for aircraft to leave. the world witnessed the full might of America's logistical capacity, with over 122,000 people airlifted over the course of the operation. The US was able to negotiate with the Taliban and ensure that the insurgents wouldn't attempt to overrun the airport directly. But they also created conditions, especially in the first days of the airlift, for a crush of desperate Afghans to put their lives at extreme risk trying to get onto planes, at times falling from the aircraft to their deaths after trying to cling to the wheels or other parts of the exterior. They were unable to wait long enough or take proactive enough action in Kabul and elsewhere to get thousands of interpreters and other US-friendly Afghans out. And on the 26th of August, a suicide bombing claimed by the Islamic State killed 13 American troops and 169 Afghan civilians at one of the gates into the evacuation zone. For Biden, the entire affair was an unmitigated disaster, made worse by the fact that, in retrospect, the parts that went well can't even be attributed to him. The fact that American air power could lock down the skies, or that America's incredible military logistics capacity could get so many people out so fast, were going to be capabilities that the US could offer regardless of who was in office. If Biden can claim any credit for success in those areas, it's credit for getting out of the way and letting the experts do their jobs. It's Biden and his high-level decision-makers, however, who failed to address the conditions that led to the rapid collapse of the Afghan military, the capture of Kabul, the mayhem that was the early days of the airlift, and the suicide bombing that claimed 181 lives. It's them who the US State Department was referring to in 2023 when its comprehensive Afghanistan after-action review called out that, quote, there was insufficient senior-level consideration of worst-case scenarios and how quickly those might follow. Perhaps Biden himself would attribute that lack of consideration to bad intel or unfair characterization by the report, or by an optimistic conviction and faith that things would work out for the better. Either way, it was dead wrong, and it is directly to blame for what happened during and after Afghanistan's fall. And we do have to point out that, in fairness, even the catastrophic conclusion that we all witnessed to the Afghan withdrawal could have been worse. One suicide bombing could have been 10 or 100, and there was no guarantee that the Taliban would stop at the airport gates. But the truth of the matter is that the avoidance of an even more devastating outcome doesn't excuse the incredible compounding failures of leadership that created the conditions for such a desperate retreat at the very end. There are a lot of people who deserve credit in both the United States and other coalition nations for the positive aspects of the world's withdrawal from Afghanistan, but very little of that credit can rightfully go to Biden. If anything, those who prevented a true worst-case scenario deserve even more credit for doing their work despite the conditions that Biden created. Okay, from Afghanistan, we come to the second great foreign policy crisis the Biden administration faced, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Now, if you want a measure of how Ukrainians feel President Biden handled the war, look no further than the mood in Kyiv on the eve of America's 2024 election. According to The Economist, quote, many senior Ukrainian officials were hoping for a Donald Trump victory. Indeed, the general consensus among supporters of Kyiv is that the Biden administration's strategy was self-deterring to the point of uselessness. As important weapons shipments were delayed, as key capabilities were denied, the mantra became that the White House was giving Ukraine enough not to lose, but not enough to win. The administration's conduct in the run-up to the invasion, too, has been used as a stick to beat the 46th president. In a pre-election essay, Trump's pick for National Security Advisor Mike Waltz pointedly wrote that, quoting here, when Russia massed forces on Ukraine's borders in 2022, President Biden could have...
Please ding me. I don't want to go back out again. If I do, it won't have to be for very long. But please ding me, please ding. I bet I have to go out one more time. Fucking annoying. I bet it's half a level. Fuck. Please ding me. You didn't ding me. Son of a bitch. No. Am I close? Yeah, I'm close. Son of a bitch. I'm so close. Oh, God. Just go back out. Just keep going. I don't have to go very long, I don't think. Like, maybe up to 100, 150. And I will ding and go to bed. Fucking exhausted. My axe is gonna break, I can feel it.
Russian leader by threatening catastrophic consequences. Instead, he reassured him, ruling out a military response and suggesting acceptance of a minor incursion. Mr. Putin then launched the biggest conflict
I knew
in
it. My
Europe
axe
since
broke
the Second
right
World
there.
War. The quote ends.
Oh,
Given all this negative energy,
At least
you
I
might
have
be tempted
money.
to write off Biden's entire Ukraine policy as an abject failure, an expensive exercise in letting Kiev lose the war slowly and at enormous cost. Yet the truth, it's more complicated than that. More so than perhaps any other area, Ukraine showed the Biden administration at both its best and its worst, determined to lead while simultaneously being hesitant about the direction of travel and unwilling to fully commit to the course. Let's start with the determined leadership. Even before Russian armor surged across the border on February the 24th, 2022, the administration took the unprecedented step of releasing intelligence on the Kremlin's intentions, sweeping away the cloud of bull Putin was trying to conjure. Then, when the bombs began raining down on Kiev, the White House, along with the UK, led the way in supplying weapons. At a time when Germany was being roundly mocked for promising to send Ukraine 5,000 helmets in a gesture of solidarity, Washington was sending anti-tank missiles. By April, the first tranche of funding, to the tune of $13.6 billion, had been released. By the middle of 2023, Congress and the White House had collectively authorized an additional $100 billion. According to the Kiel Institute, today the United States remains by far the biggest supplier of military aid to Ukraine, even if Europe has collectively sent more money once humanitarian support is included. Then there was the provision of key capabilities. The arrival of HIMARS in summer of 2022 was a genuine game changer, scrambling Russian supply lines and disrupting command and control for weeks. And it was US intelligence that allowed Kiev to pull off some of its biggest surprises in the war, such as the sinking of the Moskva, the first Russian flagship lost in battle since 1905. Now, for those who want to celebrate Biden's foreign policy successes, these are all items for the positive side of the ledger, to which the administration would doubtless add discouraging the Kremlin from detonating a tactical nuclear weapon in the autumn of 2022, when Russian lines briefly seemed in danger of collapse. And yet, there is another side, one that may even cancel out these early successes. Do you remember Mike's speech to Walt in Breaking Bad, warning against half measures?
Yeah.
Well, the negative view of Biden's Ukraine policy is that it was nothing but half measures, a set of attempts to generate the desired outcome without making the commitments necessary to achieve it. Take the Ukrainian 2023 counteroffensive. While there are a ton of reasons why it failed, a big one was the lack of necessary equipment. In a major report last spring, Britain's Royal United Services Institute highlighted the lack of air defense given to the Ukrainians, as well as Kiev being donated only a fraction of the demining vehicles such an operation would require. Or what about the long-delayed authorization for Kiev to fire ATACMS into Russian territory? As many have pointed out, that long delay allowed the Russians to prepare and move their assets out of range. As a result, a decision that could have given Ukraine a brief, devastating edge had it come earlier, instead had a limited effect on the wider war. And we could go on. There was the Pentagon's failure to agree a contract with Elon Musk over the use of Starlink prior to 2023, thereby giving the administration no recourse when Musk suddenly switched off coverage right before a major naval drone attack against Russian warships. Or there were the military transfers the White House failed to send before the election, despite already being authorized by Congress to do so. Ultimately, though, the best way of judging Biden's Ukraine policy is by looking at the results. On the one hand, Kiev is still standing. The Russian army has lost ungodly sums of men, money, and equipment, occupying not even 20% of Ukrainian soil. None of this would have been possible without American military aid. On the other hand, some of Ukraine's most productive land, it's now under Moscow's domination. As the talk turns to peace negotiations, Kiev seems to hold the weaker hand. While Ukraine's European backers must also shoulder some of the blame, there is no doubt that a full-throated commitment from the administration in mid-2022 could have left Kiev in a much stronger place. Of course, we can argue over whether it would have even been politically possible for Biden to, say, pass a $200 billion supplemental and flood Ukraine with weapons, or whether Europeans would have listened had he tried to browbeat them into moving their industries onto a war footing around the same time of the Kharkiv offensive. But the fact does remain that the administration didn't really try. Instead, Biden went for half measures. And so, today, we have a war that seems to be ending in neither a great Russian victory nor a Kremlin humiliation. A halfway outcome that seems unlikely to satisfy anyone. Could things have been worse? Well, yeah, undoubtedly. But they could have also been better. And that, in the end, may wind up being the epitaph of Joe Biden's entire Ukraine policy. From Ukraine, it's on to the Middle East, where the 4-year Biden presidency looked, at least for a little while, as if it might end up being a success story. Biden's first 2.5 years in office were defined by a focus on what the Middle East Institute described in a report delivered in late September 2023 as, quote, anything but the Middle East. How little we knew. In those days, however, such an assessment was broadly accurate. Biden had spent his time dealing with the Middle East, up until that point, attempting what his advisors described as a, quote, back-to-basic strategy, dealing with the region, its actors, and their interests as they were, rather than trying to embark on some massive change initiative that was doomed to fail. Columnist Stephen A. Cook, writing for Foreign Policy in early 2022, described the approach as ruthless pragmatism, an attempt to advance geopolitical goals in the Middle East by working quietly with a range of partners rather than engaging in the more performative condemnations or visionary appeals of his predecessors. In fact, these few years were marked by a broad stalemate in the Syrian civil war, a drawdown of hostilities in Yemen and Libya, and for reasons that the world definitely didn't fully understand at the time, a reduction in the pace of attacks from Hamas in Gaza toward Israel. He stood quietly by and let America's adversary Iran bring itself to the brink of ruin amidst mass public protests stemming from the death of Mahsa Amini. Close US ally Saudi Arabia was able to secure a normalization deal with Tehran, offering a potentially generational opportunity to de-escalate Iran and America's mutually adversarial posture. The Saudis were even on a path toward normalization with Israel, a move that, when combined with the Saudi-Iranian normalization, could have led the Middle East to a level of deconfliction that's practically unheard of. Of course, that didn't happen, did it? The massive Hamas terror attacks of October the 7th, 2023, set off a large-scale conflict with Israel, America's closest ally in the region. Israeli-Saudi normalization was taken off the table, perhaps as an intended result of Hamas's attack, and the US quickly swung into a defensive position around Jerusalem, sending all manner of military assets to the area to deter any larger explosion in hostilities. While some outlets, including the New York Times, claimed that Israel had detailed advance knowledge of the Hamas attack that they chose to dismiss over a year before it took place, it's unclear just how much US intelligence would have known and how that information may or may not have impacted Joe Biden's decision-making. What we do know is that the October 7th attack placed Biden firmly on the side of Israel in the following hostilities. Now, we'll analyze Biden's record during those hostilities through two separate lenses. One, to ask whether Biden achieved the goals he set out for his nation, and the other, to analyze the implications and impact of those decisions in real life. In the wake of the attacks, Biden's list of objectives was short and clear. The central message to Israel, quoting from Biden's address after the attacks, "As long as the United States stands, and we will stand forever, we will not let you ever be alone." Biden committed to direct action in defense of Israel, supporting the nation's defense, making further attacks against Israel impossible, and ensuring the return of hostages that Hamas had taken into Gaza. We'll tick through those points bit by bit. Biden did take meaningful steps to ensure Israel's stability, providing $17.9 billion in military aid through the end of 2024, and a further $8 billion in a final package of approved Israeli purchases. Biden's Pentagon did place substantial military assets in and around Israel. They did facilitate the sharing of in-depth military intelligence with Jerusalem, and they did use diplomatic leverage to ensure that hostilities between Israel and Iran didn't escalate to all-out war. Those acts have also had the effect of making further attacks on Israel far less likely. On the subject of hostages, Biden's record is more mixed. The US helped to broker a 2023 ceasefire that saw the release of 50 hostages, but his attempts to negotiate a broader ceasefire have been unsuccessful ever since. Notably, and in fact quite remarkably, the prospect of Israel-Saudi Arabia normalization appears to still be on the table. But there's also the other side of the coin, not just Biden's fulfillment of his own objectives in Israel, but the repercussions of his choices on the broader Middle East. Since the Israel-Hamas war kicked off, Biden has presided over his country's close alliance to a nation in Israel that's been accused of everything from collective punishment to weaponized starvation to outright genocide in its treatment of the people of Gaza. About 90% of Gaza's pre-war population has been displaced. Tens of thousands have died, and much of the territory has either been narrowly dodging famine for months or has begun to succumb. That's in no small part a result of Biden's policies, sending the bombs and other munitions that Israel has used to carry out airstrikes and providing near complete diplomatic cover for Israel in front of international bodies like the UN, when they might otherwise have attempted to pressure Israel to intervene. Regardless of what a person thinks of the situation now in Gaza, and regardless of the fact that Hamas and the Israeli government are ultimately responsible for the state of affairs, it's Biden who's facilitated Israel in all of it. And in an additional blow to his legacy back home, Biden's failure to engage with members of his own political coalition over Gaza may have been a major contributor to his party's electoral loss. Elsewhere in the Middle East, the story's largely the same. Biden declined to stop Israel from a massive airstrike campaign and ground invasion in Lebanon, instead watching as Israel used US-supplied munitions in that effort and eventually helping to broker a ceasefire. In Yemen, the Biden administration came to Israel's defense and the defense of maritime shipping amidst attacks by the nation's Houthi rebels, although the US-led coalition in the Red Sea, Operation Prosperity Guardian, could be charitably described as underwhelming and more accurately just.
Okay, guys, so here is my level 65. We're gonna ding. I was like the 5th or 6th one in my 75-man company to do it. Yeah, if we look at the 62 members, there's 7 online, and I don't know what their levels are, but yeah, 39, 56, 60, 59, 64, 65. This guy beat me, Trapune. But yeah, that was like one of the first like 5 or something like that. Yeah. So here we go. We're gonna flip it over now. Oh, maybe I didn't get enough. I don't know. This wasn't enough? No, it was. Yay. Artifacts. Yay. Okay, going to bed. Wait, I'm going to spend the points so I don't forget. Okay, we're just gonna go to bed. Okay, this was a fun session, guys. So just a reminder, you have been watching Skycatlive do a level 1 to 65 New World session, day 1 on the PvP server. Started at about 11:30 or I don't know, 12, something like that. I think it was like 12, 15, or no, I think I have the exact time. Oh yeah, this was a great session. Yeah, it was great. This was a wonderful session. So, you've been watching Skycatlive. If we take a look at the video timing here, yeah, I started today at 11:50. No, I'm sorry. Let me think about that. Yeah, 11:21. Was it 11:21? Yes, it was. Yesterday was the 21st, and now it's the 22nd. So on the 21st, we started at 11:55. Yeah, so yeah. This went a good 12 plus another 7 hours is 19 hours, something like that. Took me 19 hours to get from 1 to 65, and I did do some of the MSQ. Got quite a bit of the annoying MSQ parts out of the way, at least the beginning of the MSQ out of the way. And so on that note, I want to remind you that thank you for watching Skycatlive. I'm very tired, kind of moving slow, but I'm a full-time variety gamer all day, every day. Put me on in the background. Click on the cat space to donate. Come to the Twitch or the YouTube or the, or anything else, and give me a like, sub, or a follow. And thank you for all the likes, subs, and follows and stuff that you guys have been giving me. And thank you for your time. I will be back here tonight to play some more New World, or not tonight, but this afternoon to play some more New World in about 10-12 hours, somewhere around there. I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to go post these videos and stop this YouTube recording. And so just a reminder, I have thousands of videos on my YouTube channel. Oh, yep. Hey, cool. And I have thousands of videos on my YouTube channel, and I want to thank you for your time. And so just if you would like to see this session again, come to my channel and you will see that there is thousands of videos there. And thank you so much for coming through. Yep. And so yeah, so cool. And I love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging around. And on that note, I will be stopping the recording. And so thank you for checking out Skycat Live. Okay.